There's two things all Americans should agree on. Number one, men can't have babies. And number two, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. President Donald Trump has been very clear on this.
Don't let Iran have nuclear weapons. They can't have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And I don't want it to be a violent thing, but they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear weapon. Very simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. We're not going to allow that. They can't have a nuclear weapon. That's all. They can't have nuclear weapons. But I wanted to make a deal with them. No nuclear weapons. You can't have nuclear weapons. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. That was the only thing. The one thing I said, you cannot have. I just didn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. I said, we're going to make a great deal. Everybody's going to be happy. You're going to be rich as hell again. Everything's going to be great. But you cannot have a nuclear weapon.
You can't let Iran have nuclear weapons.
Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Very simple. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. We have a very hostile country that wants nuclear weapons. Can't let that happen.
Iran should never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon.
Iran can't have a nuclear, it can't have a missile, can't have a nuclear missile. It cannot have that nuclear capability.
And there could be like another hour worth of clips of Donald Trump over his lifetime, over his career in politics from 2015 and beyond up until just moments ago saying Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And the reason for that is because, well, first of all, we don't want the proliferation, that's tough to say, of nuclear weapons anywhere else in the world. I feel like we already have multiple nuclear powers, and some of them I don't think should be either. Looking at you, Pakistan. But Donald Trump is determined to make sure that a state sponsor of terrorism, somebody who has declared that Israel must be wiped off the map by 2040, and they got a big clock. There's we all have countdown clocks. Some of us have countdown clocks towards our birthday or the date of, our wedding or anything like that. But what Iran has in their big downtown area is a big clock that says destruction of Israel 2040. This is a country that cannot have a nuclear weapon because that would be bad for everyone. And like I said, President Donald Trump was very clear about that. And so clear was he that when the conflict between Israel and Iran escalated last night, he dipped out of the G7 conference early, after hours. He flew to Canada. He hung out. He had a meeting. He signed some trade agreements. He had some dinner. And then he was like, see you guys. I got to get to the Situation Room.
President, any statement on why you're leaving the G7 early for Washington?
Well, I have to be back. Very important. I want to just thank our great host. You did a fantastic job. Thank you in Canada. But you probably see what I see. And I have to be back as soon as I can. I'm going to have dinner with these wonderful leaders. And then I get on the plane. I have to be back early.
Have you talked about the National Security Council?
I loved it. I tell you, I loved it. And I think we got a lot done. Really a lot done. In fact, UK, we signed a big trade deal today, and we're working on others. But we had just a really great relationship with everybody, and it's really nice. I wish I could stay for tomorrow, but they understand.
Is there a reason, Mr. President,
big stuff.
Is there a reason, Mr. President? He's like, look, it's pretty obvious the reason. We've got to go. We've got to go and make sure that there's no nuclear weapons in Iran. We've got to make sure that there's no escalation of the war. We've got to make sure that they make a deal. And that's something that Donald Trump, again, has been pretty clear on. He gave him time to make a deal. They said no deal.
Have you spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu? When might you speak to him?
I've spoken to everybody.
What will you say?
Israel is doing very well, as you probably noticed, and I gave Iran 60 days, and they said no, and the 61st, you saw what happened. Day 61, so I'm in constant touch, and as I've been saying, I think a deal will be signed, or something will happen, but a deal will be signed. And I think Iran is foolish not to sign one.
And that is why Donald Trump is headed back to Washington, D.C., because Iran cannot have a nuclear... You want to hear him say it again?
Do you want to see regime change in Iran?
I want to see no nuclear weapon in Iran, and we're well on our way to making sure that happens.
Yeah, and that anyone who doubts that can just go on X, and you can see all the footage coming out of Tehran. You can see Donald Trump, who even on his True Social post reiterated that there's no stopping until Iran makes a deal, comes to the table, and says, "Okay, no more nuclear weapon," or until all their nuclear capability is destroyed. He posted, "Iran should have signed the deal I told them to sign. What a shame and waste of human life." Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran, which shows that there is going to be some kind of pending escalation. And overnight, there has been, a pending an imminent escalation in the war. Israel determined, the United States apparently, and President Donald Trump determined to make sure that the promise that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon he was on Air Force One talking to reporters on his way back to Washington, D.C. And guess what he said?
Remember, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. We don't have to go too deep into it. They just can't have a nuclear weapon.
I mean, it's the same thing he's been saying since day one, and it's a clear message to Iran. It's a clear message to anybody, any state sponsor of terror who's looking to destroy lives and kill people in mass. President Donald Trump also took other questions from reporters, and they all kind of based around the same thing. What are you looking for from Iran? How are you going to end the war?
What specifically is better than a ceasefire? What are you looking for here?
An end, a real end, not a ceasefire. An end.
So something that would be permanent.
Yeah, or giving up entirely. That's okay too.
Are you close there? Is that possible? Is that possible in the next 24
Why not?
hours?
Certainly possible. Complete give up. That's possible.
Yeah, he wants a complete and total surrender. Do you want regime change? No, I just want a complete and total surrender. That's what I'm looking for. He told them to do the deal. They didn't do the deal. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was on with Jesse Waters, and they were discussing what's going to happen when President Trump arrives home, because there was a meeting. The National Security, the National Security Committee was meeting and organizing in the Situation Room to make sure that everybody was on board and everybody knew what was happening, and the president was briefed and downloaded on the situation, and they can make some game plan moving forward.
You're going to be in the Situation Room pretty soon with the president. Is he still aiming for a nuclear deal with the Iranians? Of course. The president's, as he said today, his position has not changed. What you're watching in real time is peace through strength and America first. Our job is to be strong. We are postured defensively in the region to be strong in pursuit of a peace deal. And we certainly hope that's what happens here. And America first means we're going to defend American personnel and American interests. So when you see jets and you see air defense assets and counter UAS assets, that's because my job as the Secretary of Defense is to ensure that our people are safe and that we're strong so that we can set the conditions for a deal. And President Trump's made it clear it's on the table. The question is whether Iran will take it.
All right. So the deal is still on the table, but all options are on the table from what it sounds like. What does that look like?
What it looks like right now is we're vigilant. We're prepared, and we've messaged consistently from the beginning that we're in the region to defend our people and our assets. And Israel took an action out of self-defense. We believe that Iran, as President has said from the beginning, should not have a nuclear weapon. That position hasn't changed. They can give it up peacefully. That position hasn't changed. And as a result, right now, we've got assets in the region, and we're going to defend them. Yeah. And we're going to be strong in the process. So people are reading into a lot of aspects right now. We're strong. We're prepared. We're defensive. And President Trump hopes there can be peace.
Yeah. And so basically, though, it shakes out like this. President Donald Trump is America first. President Donald Trump does not want to create or start new wars. And President Donald Trump does not want our assets, our military, our people, our weaponry, our, soldiers put in harm's way. He doesn't want any of that. He doesn't want to spread us thinly around the world doing these regime change operations and policing this, that, and the other. No. Donald Trump is allowing Israel to pummel Iran to the point where Iran will hopefully give up. However, he's also got already military troops, and we've got a lot of stations in the Middle East, and we've got to protect those people. So Pete Hegseth is sending an enhanced force to the Middle East to protect the assets we already have there. Is it also a show of strength? Yes. Basically, it boils down to this. If Iran is getting totally destroyed by Israel and the United States hasn't even entered this war, if Iran is getting totally bombarded by Israel and the United States hasn't even lifted a finger or fired a shot, yet they've got all these military assets and they've got more and more on the way, and they've got aircraft carriers headed hightailing it over to the Middle East, to the Strait of Hormuz, to all these other places. If that's what Iran sees, then they're going to think twice about escalating this conflict any further, because Israel's a formidable opponent, but nobody beats the United States of America when it comes to military might, and Iran knows that. So Donald Trump is placing his pieces on the board in a hope that there is a full surrender. As he pointed out, full surrender, that would be good too. And he believes that they are close to they're close to making a deal, and they were close to making a weapon, even though the media reporting that's not what one advisor to President Donald Trump said earlier.
You've always said that you don't believe Iran should be able to have a nuclear weapon, but how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having it.
I don't care what anyone said. In fact, Donald Trump, using his Truth Social to lash out at some of his critics who for a long time were very close, very good allies and friends of his. But Donald Trump says, look, we all need to be on the same page of this as Americans. He wrote, America first means many great things, including the fact that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Make America great again. He also tweeted out a message to his buddy Tucker Carlson at TCN, who wrote, when he wrote, somebody please explain to kooky Tucker Carlson that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I wonder how many times President Donald Trump has written Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon on Truth Social in the last 24 hours. We should probably have someone count that. Also, kooky Tucker Carlson could be my favorite new nickname that President Donald Trump has come up with. And Tucker Carlson has been very vocal about President Donald Trump and the actions of Israel and Iran. He doesn't want the United States escalating. He doesn't want Donald Trump giving the green light to Israel. And he's a little upset because he believes that what Donald Trump did was allow this war to happen, even though the United States is not directly involved. And Tucker Carlson even said this would be the end of Donald Trump's presidency. Donald Trump then, of course, calling him kooky. There was another post on social media, on Truth Social, on X rather, by FBI Director Kash Patel, who posted an article from Just the News, and he wrote, the FBI has located documents which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 U.S. election, including allegations of interference by the CCP. The Chinese Communist Party. I have immediately declassified the material and turned the documents over to Chairman Grassley for further review. Now, this article from Just the News is, it's one of those duh moments, but basically here's the headline. FBI gives Congress intel on alleged Chinese plot to create fake mail-in ballots in 2020. FBI Director Kash Patel on Monday evening turned over to Congress an intelligence report raising concerns that China had mass-produced fake U.S. driver's licenses to carry out a scheme to hijack the 2020 election with fake mail-in ballots for, not Donald Trump, Democrat Joe Biden. The newly declassified intelligence reports from August 2020 weren't corroborated or fully investigated, and instead were recalled from intelligence agencies at about the time that then FBI Director Christopher Wray testified there were no known plots of foreign interference ahead of the U.S. 2020 election in which Biden defeated Donald Trump, officials told Just the News. The documents were turned over to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley from Iowa, who had first raised concerns to the Bureau that the intelligence hadn't been fully vetted and instead was just dismissed, even though there was evidence of the fake licenses. Thanks to the oversight work and partnership of Chairman Grassley, the FBI continues to provide unprecedented transparency at the People's Bureau, Kash Patel told Just the News in a statement. To that end, we have located documents Chairman Grassley requested, which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 U.S. election. Specifically, these include allegations of plans from the CCP to manufacture fake driver's licenses and ship them into the United States for the purpose of facilitating fraudulent mail-in ballots. Allegations which, while substantiated, were abruptly recalled and never disclosed to the public. So the allegation here, or the information that's been declassified and sent over to the Judiciary Committee for further review, states that China is making driver's licenses, fake driver's licenses, sending them to the United States so that Democrats can vote using fake mail-in ballots for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. That is something that Donald Trump had said repeatedly. People called him crazy. That is something that Donald Trump and many other people on social media said was happening, and they were doxxed, and they were canceled, and they were censored, and they were shut down, and they were demonetized, and their freedom of speech was inhibited because they were spreading quote unquote fake news and misinformation. For months after the election, President Donald Trump said, we need to investigate. There's something going on. This is not right. 81 million votes for Joe Biden. And in the last election, Donald Trump only got 77 million and surpassed Kamala Harris by over 2 million votes. Where did all the voters go? These are questions people have been asking for a long time. And this new report could open up, could shed some light on it, could share some details on it, and it could show that President Donald Trump may indeed not have been crazy, but may indeed have been just saying something that he knew all along, that a lot of us knew all along to be true, but that was suppressed by the Joe Biden administration. We will be following this story very, very carefully. We'll be following all the stories very, very carefully as President Trump returns to Washington, D.C. to see what happens with Iran and Israel. Will there be a deal? We don't know. Will there be some kind of ceasefire? Will there be an end to the war? Will Iran escalate the conflict? What will Donald Trump do next? And also, what's going to come of the big, beautiful bill? They're still working diligently in the Senate to make sure that they have the votes to pass the big, beautiful bill. We'll bring you the latest on that, too, as well as these new allegations. And we do all of that in our second daily podcast. Every single day, we have two podcasts. The one you're listening to right now, the 47 Daily, and Mark Kaye Saves the Republic, which goes live on all of our social media streaming platforms at 1 p.m. Eastern. And we also publish a podcast which you can listen to at your leisure. If you're interested, and you should be, download Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. Go to any podcast platform, whichever podcast platform you prefer. Search Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. Download, listen, and enjoy.